Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's FEB Lunch and Learn with Quentin New Year. Quentin actually grew up outside of the tiny farming community of Surprise, Nebraska, with a whopping population of 46 people. He attended high school at the nearby Utica, Nebraska, where he was part of the 2 state wrestling championship teams and 1 state runner-up. He was given the opportunity to be part of Coach Bill Snyder's first recruiting class at Kansas State University in 1989. There he had the unique experience of being part of the longest non-winning streak in college football history of 30 games and a member of the university's first bowl victorious team in 1993. Quentin then undrafted out of college, but was invited to the training camp with the Los Angeles Raiders in 1994. He was released in August before the season even started and spent the entire 1994 season at home, working for his high school wrestling coach, driving a tractor and combine for 12 hours a day throughout the harvesting season. The day after Christmas on 1994, the Cleveland Browns called and put him on the practice roster for the 2 weeks they were in the playoffs. The scouting department was shocked when he reported at a very underwhelming 260 pounds, having thought his playing days were finished. However, one coach even asked, "What happened to you?" The Browns' strength coach, Jerry Simons, convinced the rest of the staff to bring Quentin back during the offseason to see if he would do the work necessary to put the weight back on that he had lost while helping out with the harvest. And as the story goes, Coach Simons was able to convince the rest of the staff by saying, "He won't cost us anything, as no one else will want him if he weighs 260. And if it doesn't work out, we can cut him before training camp." Quentin spent the next 6 seasons in the NFL, being part of the 1995 Cleveland Browns, the 1996 and the 1997 Baltimore Ravens, 1998, 99, and 2000 Jacksonville Jaguars. He had the opportunity to learn from what should be 3 Hall of Fame coaches, Bill Snyder, Bill Belichick, and Tom Coughlin. Along his journey, Quentin had many tell him he couldn't, wouldn't, or "You'll never do that." Quentin's career is an example of hard work, determination, and relentless pursuit of a dream. Leadership Lessons from the Gridiron is a collection of some of the most important lessons he learned from the coaches and teams from whom he was given the opportunity to be a part of. It is a great opportunity right now to have Quentin join us today to do Leadership Lessons from the Gridiron. Quentin?
Great. Hello and welcome. November 30th, 1988. For most of us, it was probably just another day. For me, I was a senior in high school that day, and I imagine the highlight was the 2.5-hour wrestling practice that afternoon. While it was not a significant day for me, as I remember, it definitely was for Kansas State University. That afternoon, a group of university officials and newspaper reporters gathered at the Kansas State football offices to learn who the university's next leader of the football program would be. On this day, Steve Miller introduced an unknown offensive coordinator from the University of Iowa as the next head coach of the Wildcats. Steve did not introduce him as a great football coach. Instead, he introduced him as a great human being who happened to, at least in Steve's mind, have the potential to also be a great football coach. During his introduction, this unknown coach did not speak about wins or losses, nor did he speak about strategies. Instead, he spoke about caring about people. He spoke about the need for daily improvement by everyone, every day. He did not give a timeline as to when things would change, but rather committed to seeing things through, no matter how long it took. 63 days after this press conference, Coach Bill Snyder signed his first recruiting class. At the end of his 5th season, he did something the experts said would never be done. His team won the first bowl game in school history. I'm very proud and even more grateful to have been one of only 10 players who were part of both Coach Snyder's first recruiting class and a member of his first bowl team. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share with you today what might be some of the lesser-known leadership traits that I learned from Coach Snyder while being part of the Kansas State football program almost 3 decades ago. Leadership traits and lessons that still shape my life today. For some of the reporters that day, I'm pretty sure that most of them were upset. Some, I suspect, had a template that they had used a few years earlier, all ready to go again. All they needed to do was make a few updates, insert the new coach's name, add a quick motivational quote that I'm sure that this coach was sure to spout off, and they would be done for the day. I'm sure some of them were waiting for what they had heard many times over. Things like, we're going to be physical up front on both sides of the ball, or we're going to pound the ball between the tackles, or we're going to come off the bus throwing, or maybe even we're going to win. Or how about an I bleed purple to inspire the alumni? Some kind of quirky one-liner of motivation to excite the fans, giving them just enough reason to come to the game, even if they receive their ticket through a traffic stop. Now, I don't know if this is true or if it was just a joke, but they used to say if you got stopped speeding in the state of Kansas, the officer gave you a choice between 2 tickets to a Kansas State football game, in which you were required to attend, or you had to pay an appropriate fine. From my recollection, either no one sped through the state of Kansas in the late 80s and the early 90s, or everyone paid the fine, because it sure seemed like no one came to the games other than our parents, who I suspect were somewhat obligated to come. I'm sure most of the reporters in attendance that day, they had already written their articles before the press conference had even taken place. After all, they'd heard these things many times before. I'm sure they already knew how this was going to turn out. Another failed attempt to resurrect the money-draining, winless, hapless, hopeless, helpless football program whose only yearly goal in life was to win a single game against the University of Kansas in what was affectionately called the Toilet Bowl. Now, I doubt that there was a corporate sponsor for such a game, but if there was one, Kohler would have been an appropriate choice with a slogan like, with just one of our flushes, you can make both of these programs go away. Instead, Coach Bill Snyder sat before those in attendance and shared some boring one-liners like this. It's a tremendous challenge. I think the opportunity for the greatest turnaround in college football exists here today, and it's not one to be taken lightly. Or the only promise that Coach Snyder made this day and just about did not deliver on. We will be as good as we can be, and we will not be 0-11. Or my personal favorite, there's only one school in the nation that's lost 500 games. This is it, and I get to coach it. If you go back and watch the film, Coach Snyder has a sheepish grin on his face as he says this. Maybe that's why it's my favorite. Some experts would say that the leadership lesson being shared at the press conference that day was, do not, under any circumstance, accept a position that does not even have a minute expectation for success. Don't take on anything deemed totally impossible and proved by so many others time and time again, unless your goal is to be another statistic. Then, by all means, proceed with a full head of steam and a complete expectation for failure. Yet some others would say that there was a different lesson on leadership being shared. That is, if you should have a lapse in common sense and decide to go against every logical, reasonable ounce of advice and accept an impossible situation, then the attitude and how you approach that situation will be everything. I think that's the leadership lesson Coach Snyder was trying to convey to the few who still cared about Kansas State football, or at least the few who still cared enough to show up that day. It would not surprise me if most of those in attendance really didn't care about the program anymore, but were there underneath obligation from their employer to simply attend, or were like your long-lost friend at lunchtime who came by just for the free lunch. What if during that press conference, Coach Snyder said this instead? It's a tremendous challenge here. I don't think anyone will ever be able to succeed given the current financial resources, the lack of quality athletes, the apathetic fan base, or the lack of historical success the Kansas State football program has enjoyed all these years. I expect the longest losing streak to continue to at least 37 games, maybe even more before they fire me and I become another statistic. Realistically, the losing streak may never end. Or how about there's only one school in the nation that's lost 500 games. I expect to increase that number to at least 520 before being fired, and I need to find my next job. Leaders understand the power that is held in their thoughts, their words, and especially in their attitude. Normally, I like to interact with the people I'm given the opportunity to speak with. I'm missing that today, being 700 miles away from you. So I'm going to assume we have some young people in our audience, some who might be preparing, hoping, wanting to further their careers, someone who might be looking for that job that can change their lives or the lives of the people around them. Now, I'm not talking about some job you may have taken in college to help give you some spending cash to get you through the weekend in Aggieville and Manhattan, or Harpo's in Columbia, or the Triangle in Lawrence at the Jayhawk Cafe, the Wagon Wheel, or even Bullwinkles. I'm talking about that career or job that you really want. Imagine this. You're in your room getting ready for that job interview, preparing for that job you really want, and you're saying things like this to pump yourself up. I'm sure they won't like me. I'll never amount to much. I don't even know why I'm applying for this job. I'll never be happy doing it. Of course, they wouldn't want me. You never say anything like that because leaders understand the power of self-talk. As I prepared for this opportunity today, I did not sit in front of the mirror telling myself this. Man, why in the world are you doing this? Seriously? You have no business being here. Your story's over 30 years old. Why in the world would anyone listen to you? You've been out of the game for over 2 decades now. No way. I didn't tell myself any of that stuff. My self-talk went something like this. Right now, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, 2 of the greatest motivating speakers to ever walk the face of this earth, where they're looking down from above, wishing that you would have taught them how to speak and captivate the attention of an audience from over 700 miles away. Before we walked out on the field before any game, Coach Snyder would shut off the lights and ask us to visualize playing an outstanding game. He asked us to visualize making a downfield block, a tackle in the hole, stopping a 4th down conversion, catching the game-winning touchdown, making an incredible throw, jitterbug right, jitterbug left, escaping the unescapable for the game-winning score. Never underestimate the power of your thoughts. Thinking they are possible is the first step in making them a reality. Visualization of success is not limited to just sports. It can be done in your normal business life as well. Before you can make that $1 million sale, the presentation to save your company, get the loan from the bank to create the successful business that you've always dreamed about, you need the vision of seeing yourself accomplishing it first. Your mind then goes to work to making that vision a reality. Leaders have the vision to see themselves and the team being successful long before anyone else can or typically does. Coach Snyder had that vision, and he helped all of us in his program see that same vision. His vision never changed. He never wavered. And in return, we never wavered. For you Kansas State fans, that pass that Frankie Hernandez caught to end the longest winless streak in college history, that play was thought up while watching game film during the week. It was never in the playbook. It was proposed on the sideline during that final timeout. Carl Straw, Michael Smith, and Frank Hernandez, they could see it being successful long before they asked Coach to trust them to call it. I'm pretty sure someone out there is thinking, but if I share my vision with someone else, they might take it as their own. Yep, they might. If they do, great. You get a free pass to find out if your vision would have been successful without taking that risk. Go find a bigger vision. That one was way too small for you anyhow. Somebody else was willing to steal it. If you're worried that your vision will become too crowded for success, in my experience, don't. There'll be far more people with the vision of your failure and are willing to point out all the reasons why something will never be achieved or why you'll never be able to accomplish it than those who share that same vision with you, especially in the beginning. I mentioned earlier that I'm a very proud member of Coach Snyder's first recruiting class. I actually have recruiting letters on the University of Iowa letterhead from Coach Snyder and from Coach Del Miller. I have had someone ask me, how was Coach able to recruit anyone to Kansas State with everything being such dismal shape? Well, I'm going to share with you the pitch that Coach used on us in his first recruiting class to help see that same vision that he had. Sports Illustrated? I'm sure some of you have heard this magazine before. Well, they agreed to come to Manhattan and write an article about the program and this new coach. Coach Snyder was so proud that Sports Illustrated agreed to come and do an article about Kansas State football because he had the impression that Sports Illustrated was going to tell the story of how things were going to change and the future of Kansas State. This was Coach's #1 recruiting pitch that he used on us in his first recruiting class to convince us to come to Kansas State, and the pitch that he used on those already in the program as to the reason why they should stay. He said we should all go out and get a copy. He even told us the week that we should be looking for it on the bookshelves. So I did. That simple little pitch was his go-to. Go buy a Sports Illustrated magazine with the article that will tell the world what it is that we are going to do. That was until the article came out and the final product was published. Now, I won't read the entire article for you, but I got to share what I believe to be some of the best parts. The title of the article is Futility U. Last November, when Miller hired Snyder away from Iowa, where he was the offensive coordinator, Miller told him, Kansas State is flat on its back. You may have heard that this is the toughest job in the country. It's not. It's the toughest. How tough? When it comes to college football, nobody does it worse than Kansas State. After 93 years of trying to play the game, the Wildcats' record is 299 wins, 509 losses, and 41 ties. Dead last among the 106 Division I schools. Kansas State has been looking for its 300th win since October 18, 1986. The Wildcats have failed 27 straight times, the longest non-winning streak in the land. K-State publicist Kenny Mossman says, before I read this next quote, can you imagine how tough that job must have been? Being a publicist, trying to drum up enthusiasm for a program that's in a 27-game winless streak with absolutely no end in sight. How in the world do you sell tickets to something like that? Hey, come buy a ticket and watch our boys get slaughtered by Oklahoma this week and show your Kansas State pride by coming to the game. Maybe you could even wear purple. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that approach did not work. Kenny Mossman went on to be quoted, we may not win many games, but we are fun to watch. Sports Illustrated added, actually, the word is funny. The Wildcats' best 10-year stretch ever was 1905 to 1914 when they went 56, 27, and 3. Since World War II, their most successful decade has been 1968 to 1977. Their record during that time was 38 and 70. Does Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, American Family, whoever your insurance carrier is, give you a good student discount for a 38 and 70 record? That's a 35% success rate, and that was our most successful decade up until 1988 since World War II. For those of you who might have young drivers at home, can you imagine having a conversation with your kid upon them returning home from school one day that goes something like this? Hey, Dad, guess what? On the way home from school today, I sideswiped another car, hit a guardrail, hit a tree, drove down into the ditch. But don't worry, I was able to get out after I floored it and I broke the turn signal. But for the rest of the ride home, Dad, I didn't hit a darn thing. 35%. And that was the best that Kansas State could do for almost 100 years. I'm guessing this, however, is probably the biggest lie in the article. Last year, the average attendance at the 42,000-seat Kansas State Stadium was a horrendous 18,200. Season ticket sales were 7,200. Now, I will admit, I don't have a clue how many people were in attendance in 1988. But in 1989, I know for a fact we played more games at home that had less than 18,000 people in the stands than games that had more than 18,000 people in the stands. A couple games, we might not have even had 2,000 people in the stands unless they counted everyone by tens. There you go. You want to know how you recruit someone to the worst program in the country? That article was Coach Snyder's go-to. His original recruiting pitch to us in his first recruiting class to come to Kansas State, and the pitch that he used on those already in the program as to the reason why they should stay. Coach told us, go buy this magazine because it's going to tell the world what it is that we are going to do here in Manhattan. Okay, I need everyone to check your Fitbit right now because I'm pretty sure your pulse is racing out of control with excitement, wanting to be part of something like that. I don't know about you, but I did not hear anything there that resembled any kind of hope, did you? Was there anything there that made you say, wow, I really want to be part of the longest winless streak in the history of college football? That article gave no hope to Kansas State football. If Coach was looking for instant gratification and support from Sports Illustrated, he sure wasn't going to find it in that article. Coach Snyder never focused on the negative situations that encompassed the Kansas State program. If he did, he never let us players see it. We had more than enough people tell us that the situation in Manhattan, Kansas was impossible. What he needed was someone, anyone, who would agree with him that a possible change was possible in Manhattan. At first, there was just one person who agreed with him that change was possible, and that was the person who looked him in the eyes back from the mirror at night when he brushed his teeth. A positive possible outlook starts with just one, and that one is you. As a leader, you're the one who sets the tone. Your eyes are the window to the vision of your soul. If you're scared, everyone can see it. If you're confident, everyone can see that too. You first motivate yourself, and then you search for someone else who has that same look in their eyes and shares that same vision. And then another and another, until you have a team of self-motivators all seeing that same vision. Self-motivation is a key to being a great leader. My kids gave me the watch, I don't know if you can see it or not, that I'm wearing today for Father's Day a couple years back. It's one of those Garmin watches that's typically used to track your time when you go out for a run or a race. They gave it to me because I thought I wanted to run a half marathon. I guess you could call it my midlife crisis of thinking that I was still younger than I am. Still, I thought I wanted to run that half marathon until I was to about mile number 12. That photo in the slide deck on the left-hand side, that's me at about mile 11 and a half. Okay, I can't lie to you today. In reality, it was more like mile number 2 when I realized that running a half marathon at 275 pounds wasn't a very brilliant idea, but I still trudged on. If you ever get the opportunity to meet Coach Snyder, I'd encourage you to ask him if he would show you his watch. Compare the seconds on his watch to the seconds on your watch, or for those of you who don't wear a watch, use your phone. You'll notice that Coach Snyder's watch doesn't run any faster or slower than yours or mine or anyone else's for that matter. Maybe you'll be in luck and Coach will have on a bull watch that you get to see. Maybe he'll be wearing one that he received as a gift from somebody special. Maybe it'll be a simple Nike watch or maybe even a fancy Rolex. No matter what the watch is that Coach has on that day, when they're on his wrist, they magically all do the same thing. They keep him on Wildcat time. I didn't realize this 30 plus years ago, but this was probably the most important lesson that Coach Snyder taught us as players. During COVID, I took a job in our budget office. Before one of our budget staff meetings, my supervisor signed on early and told me that she didn't know that when she hired me, she'd no longer have the need for a clock. I kind of had an idea what she was referencing, but I played dumb and pretended I didn't know. She told me that I'm the only person who has worked for her that comes to her meetings 5 minutes before the start of each meeting. She said she knows that when the box pops up on her computer screen with my name on it, she has exactly 5 minutes before the meeting's to start. She asked me why I'm that way. I told her, because I don't want to do 8, 8, and 8. A puzzled look come across her face, and she asked, what's 8, 8, and 8? 8, 8, and 8 is 800 yards of up downs, 8 100-yard sprints, and 800 yards of bear crawls. And I don't want to ever do them because I was late for your meeting. Do you have an idea what Wildcat time is yet? Wildcat time is 5 minutes before the start of any meeting or appointment. If a meeting is to start at 8 o'clock, then Wildcat time is 7:55. This gives you 5 minutes to find a seat, settle in, collect your thoughts, and be ready for the information that's about to be shared. It also allows for the meeting to start exactly on time, eliminating disruptions from people coming in after the meeting has started, and prevents the speaker from having to repeat the information a second time. Just think, if you were late today and signed on after that last thought was shared, you would have missed what is probably the most important leadership lesson Coach Snyder taught us as young men. How many of you would still be here if I wasn't on time today? I'm sure some of you would have signed on, saw a blank screen, and logged right back off thinking there wasn't a show. See what you would have missed? In the NFL, I had a coach who started his meetings when he showed up. Now, I know that's hard to believe in the micromanagement world of the NFL, but I swear to God it's true. You were considered late if you weren't in your seat when he walked into the meeting room. It did not matter if he started that meeting 10 minutes early or if he started that meeting 10 minutes late. You could do everything right that day, but if you showed up for his 8 o'clock meeting at 7:55, only to find the door shut because coach started his meeting at 7:45, then you're either going to get fined, fired, or both. Now, who here would like to work for someone that pulled a power trip like that? How would you feel? Are you being set up for success or for failure? How much job satisfaction would you have in a situation like this? To me, a leader is someone who builds people up around them. They don't tear them down. The ownership of that organization realized that this coach wasn't the right leader for their team and fired him at the end of a 9-7 season, and they just missed the playoffs. I got cut from that team before the season started, but can you imagine how much time was wasted just sitting and waiting and wondering when the meeting was going to start, waiting for your boss to show up? Let me try to put it in perspective for you. In just one meeting of 70 players that starts 10 minutes late, that's 700 minutes in aggregate. According to Google, I can drive from my house here in Colorado to be with you in Kansas City in less than 700 minutes. And I won't even have to drive so fast that I have to worry about making a choice between selecting 2 Kansas State football tickets for the next game or paying a fine. Coach Snyder taught us that leaders are on Wildcat time. This concept of time was so important to Coach. To my knowledge, it's the only place where he didn't feel like he had enough. Coach did not care about facilities, gear, offices, weight rooms, or any of that stuff. Coach understood not only the value of an hour, but the value of a minute. Did you know that there's 1,440 minutes in each day? For those of you who don't believe me, feel free to do the math. It's 24 times 60. Or if you're not good at math, just Google it. It's funny for me to listen to Steve Miller reminisce about the situation at the Kansas State athletic program in 1988. Steve Miller was hired on June 27, 1988 as the athletic director. That was just 156 days before Bill Snyder was hired. As Steve tells the story, and I have no reason not to believe him knowing firsthand what the facilities and everything else was like, Steve says it wasn't like the program had a little bit of money to operate on. It was that Kansas State had no money to operate on. That's like going to the ATM and the ATM machine kicking out a receipt before you can make a selection with the words printed on it. Not today. I don't think so. Or as my youngest daughter tells me all the time, no bueno, Papa. We weren't going to compete in the Big Eight by spending more than any of the other programs or wooing anyone with our facilities. Shorty, our equipment guy, well, he was lucky if he was able to give us a pair of shoes that even matched. Even the first practice shirt issued to me did not have my number on it. I was number 367. The funny thing is we probably didn't even have 67 players on the team at that time, let alone another 300. I'm sure some of you who are Zig Ziglar fans have heard the saying or some version of this quote: you must first plan to win and prepare to win before you can ever expect to win. Coach understood that positive thinking would only take us so far. But when we finally got to that point, he made sure we had already put the work in. So when that time came, we also expected to win. Think of it this way. Some people claim that staying at a Holiday Inn might make you believe you can accomplish anything the following day. But in reality, only if you did the work before staying at the Holiday Inn could you really expect to be successful the following day. Coach made it clear we would not be staying at the Holiday Inn, and nor would we run the risk of thinking that there was a shortcut someplace. Coach never promised that we would win any game, but he made sure that we would win in the planning and the preparation part of that equation. I think Coach took it as his personal objective to make sure we would not lose in these 2 areas. We were not going to allow anyone, and I do mean anyone, to work harder than what we did. And we were going to be more efficient with the 1,440 minutes that we were given each day than any other program in the country. You see, Coach knew that everyone else in the conference, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, everyone was given 24 hours in the day. But while they were measuring their days by the hour, we were going to be measuring our day by the minute. Coach timed us to see how long it took us to run from one field to the next. For the practice schedule the following day, he took that amount of time that it took us to run the day before, subtracted an amount of time that he felt was reasonable, and expected the drill the following day to begin exactly on the time that he set based upon the previous day's observance. Needless to say, we got very good at running. Coach got so good at timing us that he knew how long it took us to go from the practice field to the locker room to the shower, drive to the training table, eat, and get back for meetings. Again, subtracting some time each day for what he thought was reasonable until he felt that he had eliminated as much of the wasted time as possible. It was very apparent from the very first day. Not only were we going to prepare physically to compete in the Big Eight, but part of Coach's plan to catch all those other programs was to be more efficient in every other program, not only in the Big Eight, but also in the country. Coach's work ethic is well documented. I know firsthand that those stories of him basically living in the football offices those first years, well, they're true. Not only was Coach willing to make the sacrifice, but he expected all of us to work equally as hard. Now, he did not expect us to be there all hours of the night like he was, but he expected that same kind of effort from each one of us. Coach led by example and wanted us to follow his lead. Coach's plan was to simply outwork, outplan, outcoach, and yes, be more efficient than everyone else. I have not met anyone who has understood the value of a minute more than Coach Snyder. Eliminate the waste. Eliminate the distractions or the inefficiencies that are preventing you from being as productive as you can be. Sometimes those distractions are other individuals. We had many people who decided the work involved was not worth it to them. Coach was always, and I mean always, looking for ways to make the day more efficient. Each day, Coach had a schedule, not only for him and the coaching staff, but also for us players. I'll guarantee you there was not a day that Coach was at Kansas State that he did not have a schedule. Coach never had to waste time wondering what he was going to do on any given day. He knew. He had a schedule in front of him to tell him where he was going to be and, more importantly, for how long. If the schedule said we were going to be in a meeting from 2:15 to 3 o'clock, then you at 3:01, you better make sure that you're not still in that meeting room. Otherwise, you're going to be late for what was next on that day's schedule. Coach taught us that if there's a minute on the clock, then we still have a minute to get better, no matter how bad we were getting beat. If you don't believe in the power of a minute or the value of a minute, just try missing one and see what happens. I hope this resonates with you as how unbelievably valuable every minute of your life is. Because if you have a minute, you have a chance to make a difference. How you choose to use the time given to you is your choice, but you'll never get that minute back. Coach taught us that those who measure their days by the hour will eventually be passed by those who measure their day by the minute. Coach Snyder taught us leaders understand the value of time and seek to be more efficient in everything that they do. Now, this concept of efficiency with time that was in our daily schedules, it was also built into our daily routine. Coach Snyder was so efficient that he worked a series of tests into our daily routine without most of us even knowing. Most of these tests had very little to do with X's or O's. They weren't designed to determine if you were physically ready to play, but more to do with determining if you were reliable, trustworthy, and responsible. Have you ever been given an assignment at work that you felt was beneath your capabilities and wondered why it was assigned to you? Maybe your supervisor is testing you to see how you respond before trusting you with the bigger, more challenging project. Coach Snyder gave us these types of tests on a daily basis. He wanted to know if he could trust us with something bigger. The most important thing to a football coach? Well, it's a football. That's what Coach was trying to determine on a daily basis with each and every one of us. Could we prove to him that we were reliable, trustworthy, and responsible enough to do the small things right, that he could trust us with the most valuable thing he knew of, a football? We had 3 tests when we entered any building on campus. These tests were expected to be adhered to when entering any building, but were enforced to the letter of the law in the building that sat at 2201 Kimball Avenue. You better remove your hat, and you better remove your ear screw before you enter that building. The consequences were if you chose to leave your hat on or your ear screw in, Coach would collect your hat or your ear screw and you'd never get them back. Some of you might be wondering what an ear screw is. Most people call them earrings. Coach Snyder called them ear screws. He asked that you removed them out of a sign of respect whenever you entered a building. But honestly, it was about something else. It did not matter how expensive your hat or your ear screw were. If you were caught, he added them to his collection. I can assure you he had some pretty nice ones. Nobody knew what happened when the closet got full, but we all assumed that they found their way to Goodwill. But in reality, nobody knows. During my time as part of the Kansas State program, I listened to many who argued in an attempt to get their hat or their ear screw back. The most common argument was that neither had an effect on the way they played the game of football, so why does it even matter? Coach Snyder's response was, "You knew the rule, correct?" Followed by something like, "Yes, neither your hat nor your ear screw directly affects the way you play the game of football, but choosing to keep them on inside this building will have a direct effect in your ability to keep them." Why do you think something so trivial as removing your hat or your ear screw before entering a building was so important to a coach? After all, it's a hat. It's an ear screw. Lots of people have them and wear them wherever they want. It's not a football. I think it was important to Coach because Coach understood that doing the small things right would translate into doing the more important things correctly as well. Leaders understand that the little things matter. Those are the first 2 tests. The third test was this: be respectful of everyone in the building, no matter their role in the organization. To Coach Snyder, it did not matter if you were a coordinator like Del Miller or Bob Coe, the academic counselor Kathy Green, the Derby Food Line servers Valerie Nixon or Carnita Williams, the janitor Lyle Hassenbach, or the person who washed the laundry, a guy we affectionately knew as Pops McCoy. Everyone in that building had a job to do, and Coach expected everyone to do their job to the absolute best of their abilities. Since everyone was expected to perform at this level, everyone deserved your respect. Because if they weren't there to do their job, you would be doing it in their absence because there was no money to hire a replacement. In a successful organization, your ego needs to be checked at the door. If someone is part of your team, treat them with the utmost respect because everyone has the power within themselves to be special at something. Leaders recognize this and respect the contribution that each team member makes, no matter how big or how small that contribution is. Leaders respect everyone within the organization, no matter their role. Last August, my third child decided to enroll at Kansas State. My first two chose to stay closer to home and attend Colorado State. When I asked number 3 why he chose Kansas State, I had hoped he would say something like, because that's where you and mom met. Instead, he told me because I want to get as far away from you people as possible and become my own person. I guess he figured the 7.5-hour drive was enough space to be able to accomplish that. I will admit, I was crushed at first when he told me this. But since then, on a couple of occasions, he's asked if I'd come have supper with him. He still tells me it's because the dormitory food is terrible, which might be true. It looked pretty good to me, though, when we were on a college tour. Driving to Manhattan that first time when I dropped him off, I made him stop at the Kansas Welcome Center where I picked up one of these. Can you believe that they still give them out for free? It's almost like either they want you to come see everything that Kansas has to offer, or they want to help you find the road that will lead you out of the state as quickly as possible. For those of you who forgot what this is, it's a map. It's on paper, it's not on your phone. It folds up so you can store it in your glove box so you can use it again later. And surprisingly, it still works even when you don't have cell phone reception. Of course, my son didn't see the need for it, but I still put one in his glove box anyway. When Coach Snyder arrived in Manhattan, he had a list in the front of our playbook of goals for success. It was a list of principles that he believed that if we followed, then success would follow us. Kind of like how following a roadmap will successfully get you to where you'd like to go. Your chances of being a successful leader increase when you find someone who has been successful in what it is that you would like to achieve. Just follow the map that they leave behind and your success increases greatly. Although Coach has never told me this, I do think Coach found a leader who he respected and wanted to emulate in his own program. John Wooden is arguably one of the greatest leaders in college sports history, and he left a map for others to follow. Google John Wooden's Pyramid of Success sometime. You will see a lot of similarities between the Pyramid of Success and the goals for success. If there's a map to show you how to get to where you want to go, then follow it. It'll make your life easier, and it'll help get you there a whole lot faster. I love it when someone comes in and tells me that they know all about the history of Kansas State football and proceed to tell me everything they know about Michael Bishop and Colin Klein. I ask them if they know who this Dickey guy is, or Spaney, or maybe even Kaufman, or what our record was before Bishop and Klein even knew where Manhattan, Kansas was. Their blank faces typically say it all. If they go off on a tangent and tell me that they know the 16 goals for success, depending upon my mood, sometimes I'll ask them if they knew that in 1989, there was actually only 10 goals for success. This usually blows their mind, and they tell me that I have no idea what I'm talking about because they know that there's 16, and then they proceed to list all 16 of them to me again. This is what I call a get excited book. Athletic programs put stuff like this out together to get the fans excited about the upcoming season. Inside this particular publication, the football coaching staff is highlighted. Included in these coaches is Charlie Coe, the running backs coach, and Kevin Ramsey, the defensive ends coach. For you historical buffs, they were part of Coach Snyder's first coaching staff, not his second. That means this publication is from the first season of 1989 when we went 1-10. On the back of this Get Excited book, not even on the first pages of the booklet, are the Wildcat goals for success. If you can see, you'll see that there's only 9. Now, I can't prove with the help of anything that I have written still from 1989, But as my memory serves me, our first playbook had great effort and enthusiasm split out from the very beginning. So in my mind, we actually had 10 original Wildcat goals for success. In the 1991 Get Excited book on page 48, we're not even close to the front 10 pages of the book, are the Wildcat goals for success again. There were 12. It wasn't until 1994 when David Small wrote a book about Coach Snyder and the Kansas State football program that on page 9, finally we made the top 10, just barely, is a list of Coach Snyder's 14 goals for success. First, we had 9 or 10, depending upon what you want to believe. Then we had 12. Then we had 14. When Coach Snyder retired the second time, he ended with 16 goals for success. Kind of makes me wonder, had Coach continued to coach for another 10 years, if we'd have 20 goals for success. When my father and mother took me to Manhattan for the first time in 1989, if we had stopped at the Welcome Center in Marysville, Kansas, I'm pretty sure the map that they would have given us would be different than the one that I got last August when I took my son to Manhattan for the first time. Life, business, football, they all evolve. Roads change, detours happen. Your willingness to accept change and change with it allows you as a leader and the team you lead to continue going in a direction towards your goals. Leaders have a map to show them how and where they want to go and update the map as improved routes are built. As we enter the fourth quarter of our time today, I won't try to close out by attempting to convince you that I was an athlete or that I was even any good. I did, however, have a very blessed career filled with many wonderful memories. Mitch Holdis, before he was the voice of your Kansas City Chiefs, he was the voice of the Kansas State Wildcats. Mitch told me at Coach Snyder's second retirement ceremony that he's not been around anyone who had less natural talent as myself and accomplished as much as what I did. I had the privilege to play for what should be 3 Hall of Fame coaches in Bill Snyder, Bill Belichick, and Tom Coughlin. The 4 most important leadership principles that I witnessed from all 3 of these coaches were this. 1, in order to be a leader, someone has to first be willing to trust you enough to follow you. If you break that trust, you never get it back. When that trust is broken, well, that's when coaches need to find new jobs. To have someone that is willing to follow you is the ultimate gift that anyone can give you. These 3 coaches worked hard every single day to build trust within their teams. 2, in every leadership situation, there will be times of despair. Each of these 3 coaches taught me the same lesson on how to respond during times of difficulty. No matter what's going on around you, ignore the noise. Focus on what you can do to improve the situation, even if it's in the smallest amount, because even the smallest amount of improvement is directing you into a better situation. 3, don't ever quit. Fight for your team each and every day. When your team knows that you'll fight for them, they will in turn fight for you. You aren't a leader because of your title or your position. You are a leader because someone else was willing to follow you in pursuit of something they share the same vision for. 4, people don't follow average. If you want to be a leader, you have to aspire to be great and in turn help those around you become great in the process. In 1989, the Wildcats won only 1 game. In 1990, the Wildcats got beat by the eventual national champions 64-3. In 1991, the Wildcats got beat by the eventual national champions 56-3. In 1992, the Wildcats were expected to have a breakout season and finish disappointingly with an overall losing record. The 1993 Wildcats won the first bowl game in school history. During my time at Kansas State, we were 27, 28, and 1. We were not even a 500 team. I've been gone from college for about 20 years when one afternoon I walked into the post office in Manhattan, Kansas to mail some letters. I did not have a stamp, and they did not have one of those fancy automated stamp machines at the time. But I recognized the person behind the counter from when I went to school and thought, man, this guy's surely got to be close to retirement. When it was my turn, I walked up to his counter, put my letters on the counter, and asked him if I could purchase some stamps. He picked up my envelopes, shuffled them a little bit, looked down at them, looked back up at me, pointed at the return address, kind of chuckled and asked, "Is that you?" I said, "Yes, sir." Big old grin come across his face, and about that same time, his big old paw came across the counter as he spoke. I've got to shake your hand. I remember when you came here, we weren't very good, but when you left, we were all right. Man, you made my day. I'm going to retire here in 2 weeks, and this was the best retirement gift I could have ever gotten. Thanks. During my time at Kansas State, we failed more times than what we achieved a victory. But all this man remembered was we were okay when I left. You see, failure is an event. It's not a person. You grow the most when you're faced with adversity. Take pride in who you are and the struggles you face during the course of your life. If you're wanting to improve yourself, no matter your situation, I encourage you to follow the guidance that Coach Snyder laid out during that first press conference on how together we could change a situation most deemed to be impossible by simply improving just a little bit each and every day. All of those small pieces of improvement someday will make a big difference if you just don't quit. Wake up each day with a plan. Know what it is that you're going after. Pursue it relentlessly. Realize that some days will be better than others, but it really doesn't matter how you feel because you need to be consistent and work the hardest on the days that you don't feel like it. And never forget, you can't be a leader if you're afraid to lose. On November 30th, 1988, Coach Snyder sat before university administrators, current staff members, and the press and said it will take the combined effort of each and every one of us to change the direction of the Kansas State football program. I don't know when it will happen, but if we improve just a little bit each and every day, I can assure you it will happen. This has been an unbelievable honor for me today to share my story with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Thank you so much, sir. I truly appreciate you sharing your story, your journey, and just all this amazing information. Are there any questions?
I put everybody to sleep.
I got a question. Quentin, this is Elaine. So yeah, I got a couple pages of notes from just all the lessons, some that I already implement, and definitely some that I'm going to take away from what you shared. But what would you say is your biggest takeaway as far as just leadership and someone being successful? If you had to just give us a couple pointers on things that helped you back then and that may be continually helping you right now in your life.
In referring to the three coaches that I had the pleasure to play for, and Bill Snyder, Bill Belichick, and Tom Coughlin. Great example for all three of them. Bill Snyder was a high school coach in the state of California when he first started out. He realized that that would not get him to where he wanted to go. He gave up coaching in the state of California and moved on to where he coached eventually at North Texas. Hayden Fry was his head coach at that time. Bill Snyder was the offensive coordinator. Hayden Fry took the job at the University of Iowa and followed him along to Iowa from North Texas. As Coach says, that he really didn't have a choice because if he wanted to have a job, he needed to move along with Hayden Fry to Iowa. When Bill Belichick, I had the opportunity to play for Coach Bill Belichick in 1995. This was long before Tom Brady, long before any of the Super Bowl appearances that the Patriots enjoyed during the time that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were together. Bill Belichick was actually fired in 1995 after that season in Cleveland. As you can see through the resilience of him, he's had a pretty darn career ever since he's left Cleveland, winning Super Bowl championships multiple times since leaving Cleveland. Tom Coughlin was our head coach in Jacksonville. He didn't win his first Super Bowl until he went back to be the head coach of the New York Giants. In all three situations, if there was one takeaway that I had to take away from all three of these gentlemen, was don't quit. No matter how bad that situation is, just don't quit. Because if you don't quit, you still have a chance.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Quentin? Okay.
I can't express, Elaine, I can't express my gratitude for the opportunity to share my story with you and your group today. This has been an unbelievable experience for me, and I thank you very much for your time and everybody else's time who participated today.
Okay, and there's definitely several comments in here for you, so we'll make sure, John, can you make sure you save the chat so that
Yes,
Quentin will
absolutely.
take a look at it? Okay, cool. Okay, well, thank you very much, Quentin, for your time, and just your humility is definitely a continued testament to me. And thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you joining us, and stay tuned for our next Lunch and Learn will be in June. So stay tuned for details on that. And if you can, please take a minute to take the poll that's up there. It's just 2 questions. And we'd appreciate it. That will help us out as we continue to try to make this Lunch and Learn program better for you guys. So any suggestions that you have, let us know. And Michelle and I will try to make sure we can implement as much of that as we can. So I'll turn it over to you, Michelle.
No, I think you did a great job there, Elaine. I just want to let everybody know that after you take this poll, if you actually look at the chat, I did cut and paste our FEB Lunch and Learn webinar series link there, where you can actually check out future polls as well as previous Lunch and Learns that have been recorded, and or the presentations themselves if they weren't recorded, if you want to check those out. We're always offering different opportunities for people to get involved, to come to Lunch and Learns. And if you'd like to be a speaker, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Elaine. We'd love to sit there and talk and connect with you as well. Again, thank you so much, Quentin, for your time. I appreciate everybody's time coming out today for the Lunch and Learn. I know I'm taking away a couple of key points here, the power and the volume of a minute. It really kind of struck a chord with me, specifically with today going as it has been. Let's see, I was just going to double check the chat to see if we had any questions. Like one last time. Let's see. And we've got the poll. Is there anything else that anybody has any questions on, or anything that we could help assist with?
I don't see any additional questions, but again, a lot of great comments that I think Quentin will enjoy.
Absolutely.
So.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. We appreciate you.
We may have lost Michelle. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you, Quentin. And we will give you 7 minutes of your day back. Thank you. And I hope you join us for some future Lunch and Learns. As Michelle said, you can look in the chat to get the link to the Lunch and Learn series to be able to get the recording from this or past events. And also we share the slides in that as well. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.